Hey everyone, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for Richmond Inno's virtual State of Innovation, the future of supply chain. Just quick reminder, attendees are on mute. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of the event, so make sure you drop those questions in the chat box. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. So for those who don't, I'm Elise Franco, staff reporter for Richmond Inno. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Richmond Inno and what we do, we're a part of a growing network of sites. We're currently in 18 markets with more coming soon. We're committed to covering and connecting local technology, startups, growth, and innovation. We just launched Miami Inno today, so be sure to check out the innovation that's happening in South Florida. And of course, visit richmondinno.com to see what we're all about and sign up for The Beat, our twice a week newsletter. The Beat is the best way to stay plugged into everything that's impacting the local innovation economy. In it, you're going to get the local tech and startup news you need, analysis you certainly won't find anywhere else, information on upcoming events, and cool job openings. And it all happens for you in a fun conversational manner. Before we get to meet our founder showcase and panel, I want to thank our sponsors for whom this event would not be possible. Our presenting sponsor and gold partner, Accenture, who is proud to support local innovators, startups, and businesses on their digital transformation journeys. Our founding partner, Activation Capital. Thank you. We have three founders here today, and we want to take a few moments to allow you to get to know them and their startups. One startup was on our 2021 Startups to Watch list, and the other two are working on supply chain solutions. First up, we have Andrew Elliott, co-founder of RoundlyX.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the intro, Elise. I'm Andrew Elliott, co-founder and CEO of RoundlyX, which rounds up your spare change into Bitcoin and over 50 other digital assets. And in the process is building a global, full spectrum digital asset wealth management platform. We are able to scale as a SaaS product quickly all over the world, given that our model is a partner model that doesn't take custody of assets. So that uniqueness allows us to plug up to the existing digital asset exchange infrastructure, almost like an add-on, like a SaaS add-on, enabling our tool set. That tool set, the Roundup tool set, allows the exchange partner to drive transaction volume and AUM into their platform, but also allows the user to invest responsibly in an exciting but volatile new emerging asset class. We've all heard about the volatility in the digital asset space. How do roundups really work? Well, if you sign up for RoundlyX, it's a quick 2-minute process. You connect your bank account, and then you connect your exchange account, and you're up and running. You might buy a cup of coffee for $1.50. The 50 cents to the nearest whole dollar goes into your preset allocation, Bitcoin or one of the other 50 we support. We exited beta in November 2019 with the announcement of our first private API integration into the Voyager exchange. Voyager at the time and still is a publicly traded company, and we were a 3-person shop out of Richmond, Virginia. So very exciting day for us. And ever since, we've added new exchange partners, new exchange integrations, and the growth has been pretty phenomenal. We completed our seed round this past April, led by CIT, and are looking forward to building out our mobile app this year and entering Europe.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Next up, we have TJ Tann Jr., co-founder and CEO at Relai.
Hi, I'm TJ Tann, co-founder, actually Chief Operating Officer at Relai. And what we aim to do is provide within an hour delivery for everything besides food, freight, and medicine, sourced directly from local and mid-sized businesses. I'm a co-founder along with 2 other co-founders, Miles Martin and Dylan Spann, and we incorporated last year. And what we aim to do is build a local platform where people, instead of shopping at big box stores or large online platforms, shop at local and mid-sized businesses for clothing, for gift shops, for everything they need, and have it delivered to them within an hour. And so the way our delivery service works and the model is like a relay race. And so you order something, let's say you order a pair of sneakers, one, what we call sprinters, which is a crowdsourced delivery person, picks it up from a store. delivers it to what we call an exchange zone, which is a 15 to 17 compartment parcel locker placed 3 miles away from each other in the city of Richmond. And then another sprinter delivers it to wherever you are, whether that be your home, your office, whether you're at a park, at a friend's house, or you yourself as a shopper can go to that parcel locker and pick up your order. And so right now we are in our beginning stages. We've raised $1.5 million out of our $2 million goal. And we're looking to close our seed round by the end of the summer, and looking for an investment of $500,000. And so I'll drop my information in the chat. And if you are interested, right now we are looking to launch early 2022. And so right now we're trying to connect with as many local merchants as possible. So if you know anybody who owns a local business or a mid-sized business in Richmond, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are eager to talk to them and try and get them on a platform. Thank you.
TJ, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing more from Relai. And finally, we have Darrell Jervey, founder and CEO of Warehowz.
Everybody, I'm Darrell Jervey. I am the founder CEO of Warehowz. We started operations in 2018 and launched our product in late 2019. We're an on-demand warehousing marketplace. We currently have 1,200 warehouses in our vetted warehouse network. That puts us right at 500 million square feet of space under contract, which makes us 2.5 times bigger than Amazon. Love to say that. And we have about 50 million square feet of available warehouse space in the United States and Southern Canada. What we do is we match companies that are looking for warehouse space with warehouses around the country. A lot of people like to say it's like the Airbnb of warehouse space, although it's quite a bit more difficult in the B2B environment to negotiate and contract. But we offer full service of negotiating, contracting, and matching of vetted warehouses that we interview and vet to put onto our platform. We have grown every year, every month since we've been in existence. This is a very exciting time. Warehousing is very limited in the US right now, and we have lots of space. We typically specialize in contracts that are shorter than 3 years. When people are looking for space, we offer it to them when they need it, for how long they need it, and where they need it. It is called flexible warehousing for a reason, and we like to say that our platform is easy, flexible, and reliable. And it's been a very good and interesting time to be in the on-demand warehousing space. So we continue to grow. We are not currently in a funding stage. We're looking to raise our A round of funding by the end of Q1 of next year. And we have great local partners and are thrilled to be a part of the Richmond innovation scene.
Thanks so much again to Darrell, TJ, and Andrew. We appreciate you guys giving us some information about your companies today, and be sure to check out our coverage of those companies on richmondinno.com, or just reach out directly if you need more information. And so now on to today's topic, supply chain. The global pandemic forever changed how people and businesses access products and services and how they expect those things to be delivered. With that, the past year has been a rapid, extreme pressure test on an organization's supply chain, forcing companies ranging from startups to Fortune 500s to adopt new strategies, solutions, and models. Today, we'll be speaking with local supply chain experts on trends, innovations, best practices around building sustainable and efficient supply chains. As a reminder to our audience, you are on mute. However, if you have questions for our panelists, drop those in the question box and we'll address those during and after the initial discussion. And don't forget to chat with our panelists. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Jeff Shockley, Associate Professor of Supply Chain Management and Analytics at Virginia Commonwealth University. Welcome, Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Elise. It's really exciting to be here, hearing about all the interesting things people are doing in innovation and supply chain management. My name is Jeff Shockley. I'm Associate Professor of Supply Chain Management and Analytics at Virginia Commonwealth University. I came here from the College of Charleston, where I helped start the supply chain management program. But prior to getting my PhD, I worked in what became supply chain management. I'm sure we fully called it that so much back then, but I came from the finance organization because I've determined that's where the money was. So I worked here in Richmond locally with Circuit City Carmax Group. And before that, I worked in supply chain related functions for Eli Lilly and Company. So it's great to be here. I'm excited to ask. I've got some interesting questions for the panel. I'd like for the panel to log on and introduce themselves. First, we'll talk to Wendy Wellener, she's Vice President of Shared Services at Dominion, followed by Evie Clarke, who's Health Products Exchange Connect, and Russell Moore, who's just Strategic Consulting Managing Director at Accenture. You guys could just briefly tell us about what you do, and then we'll introduce yourselves and tell us what you do in your organization.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. I'm Wendy Wellener. I'm the Vice President of Shared Services and Chief Procurement Officer at Dominion Energy. I've been with Dominion Energy for over 30 years, which every time I say that blows my mind that I've been here that long. I actually started as an intern with the company and have had a great career in supply chain, facilities management, HR, nuclear operations, a very diverse background over those 30 years. All at the same company, which has been great. Those of you all who are located in Richmond know us as your electricity provider. We actually operate in 16 states, offering safe, clean, reliable, and affordable energy, electricity, and gas to nearly 7 million customers. We have a corporate value of embrace change here at Dominion Energy, and we also have a Chief Innovation Officer, which is exciting. It's always great to talk to him. So I am excited today to join Richmond Inno for this panel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm Evie Clarke. I am the CEO of the Healthcare Products Exchange. My background is 33 plus years in the healthcare products marketplace. I was a former executive for McKesson and was an executive vice president for Owens & Minor, for those of you who are local to Virginia, two of the largest supply chain organizations in healthcare. The Healthcare Products Exchange is a digital marketplace that's designed specifically for professional healthcare. We connect distributors, manufacturers, and care providers into a single marketplace to create visibility and access to a broader set of supply sources. And we started this venture back in 2018 in terms of development, and actually launched to market really earlier this year.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Russ Moore. I'm the Managing Director at Accenture. I'm responsible for sourcing and procurement across industry in our South Market unit here in North America. And started my career with Accenture about 23 years ago, but took a brief hiatus for about 7 years where I was the Executive Director of Indirect Procurement for Constellation Energy here in Baltimore, where I live. Exciting to be part of the discussion today. Also had a great opportunity to work with Wendy and her team in Richmond at Dominion Energy for the past 2 years. And so appreciate your insights here today as well. So thanks everyone for joining, and look forward to the conversation.
Great, let's get to it. Quick question. The pandemic was definitely a pressure test on most businesses' supply chains, revealing hidden vulnerabilities and risks. In fact, according to Accenture study, 88% of companies, CSCOs, said that the pandemic has been their greatest stress test. So what did the last 18 months reveal about your supply chain, and what's different about it today than it was at the beginning of 2020?
I'll go ahead and start. This is Evie. It's interesting. We're a startup, but we started development of our technology back in 2018 under the premise that there were a lot of medical supply shortages, and that when they happened, that there was a tremendous amount of available supply that just simply wasn't visible to those folks who actually needed those supplies. And we saw that at an individual product level. Well, COVID was the mother lode, as you guys know and experienced. It really validated our entire premise that there was a tremendous amount of supply. And, I know we have a lot of supply chain folks on here, so you're seeing this entire bullwhip effect play itself out, where you simultaneously had surplus in some places at the same time. You had major shortages and people couldn't find product. And our model is really designed to create a marketplace that connects and maximizes access and visibility to sources. So more than anything, it validated our model. And I would tell you that when we were prototyping this and going out and having to talk to providers, we were kind of having to explain our value proposition. We don't have to do that anymore. It's really, they understood it, they lived it, they breathed it, and we actually have to get them to stop talking about it. So that's a major change for us in the marketplace.
Russell or Wendy?
Yeah, sure. I would just add on, early COVID, and I think, my conversations with Wendy and others, a lot of our clients experience, figuring out how to get, PPE or protective equipment to their field folks, so folks who are necessary for operations. One of the interesting things that we did at Accenture is we partnered with Microsoft to create a really kind of a match.com between companies that had the ability to create PPE and then to companies that were in need. And our primary focus was healthcare, obviously first, and then we had secondary companies like utilities that are necessary to maintain, the foundation of our grid. And it was really interesting. So there were companies like Louis Vuitton that you would typically think of that make perfume, who were converting their facilities to be able to make hand sanitizer. And so we saw a quick and agile adjustment in the marketplace to be able to match those supply and demand factors, really to help those most at need. And so it was pretty remarkable to see how quickly and agilely we were able to pull together a program like that to really get the what was most needed out into the hands of those in operations. And I think, Wendy, you guys experienced a lot around figuring out how to contract and think about differently around engagement with your employees as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the pandemic really emphasized the value of supply chain as well to the overall organization and the critical function that we provide. We saw this coming. There was a lot of discussion about the pandemic late into 2019. And so, we provide a critical service, obviously, at Dominion Energy to 7 million customers to keep their electricity on and the gas flowing. And we have robust business continuity plans based on that, because that we manage and that we train on. So then in a situation like the pandemic, this planning is even more critical when so many employees across the country started working from home. So we saw even more reliance upon power sources to keep the internet services running, households functional, computers and phones charged up, things that you don't necessarily think about in normal operations. So while about 35% of our employees were able to effectively work from home, including myself, I was working from home remotely for 16 months. Most of our officers were, most of my team was, with the exception of our Warehowz folks. The majority of our employees were still at work every day in support of that mission of critical infrastructure. So keeping them safe was our primary priority. We planned ahead. Obviously we can't wait till a catastrophe happens. So as Evie and Russ said, we needed to be ready. We purchased PPE. We immediately pivoted from, our transformers and our cable and our valves and things like that we usually buy, which we still obviously needed to continue to buy. But we started buying masks and hand sanitizer and wipes and cleaning supplies. And we really strategically started sourcing those. About 70% of those supplies were purchased from small, local, diverse suppliers who came through for us when other large suppliers, as Evie said, there was just such a shortage, really couldn't. So we ended up with N95 masks, so many of them that we were able to donate them out to hospitals and states which we operate in. We also engaged with suppliers to coordinate critical testing services for our employees. So testing was really not available in the beginning. So we worked with providers and state health agencies to facilitate getting the vaccines to our employees in the most efficient way possible. And in some cases, that was through an on-site clinic that we hosted with volunteers, of our own volunteers, with a partner to actually administer the vaccine. And then some followed the state protocol if the state was the best option, the most effective, efficient way. So this involves standing up site clinics. We had 140 volunteers, 51 clinics in 9 different locations just in Virginia alone. So, that doesn't happen without a significant amount of focus and teamwork, which we've always known we've had at Dominion Energy, but it's very evident when you go through a global crisis such as this one. So obviously the PPE component was critical, but the teamwork that it took to actually pull together the vaccination coordination efforts as well is something that we'll definitely learn from and appreciate being a part of. As part of a horrible scenario when you're dealing with a global pandemic, that was a little bit of a positive thing that came out of it.
Right. And that's a good transition to my next question, Wendy. It's first to you and then maybe to the rest of the team. You talked about some things that you guys did at Dominion that were as a result of the pandemic. And a lot of people have made a lot of changes during the pandemic. And then what amongst those changes are going to revert to the way they were before the supply chain? And what changes do you guys see as permanent going forward that you made during the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've talked about that a lot. So, we learned a lot about, again, the value of teamwork and collaboration, relationships with suppliers, and integration with the business segment operations teams that we support on a day-to-day basis. Also, and this probably applies to many, I think the biggest takeaway we had was we learned the value of that ability to work virtually and the technology that's available to enable that. So pre-pandemic, I'll just out myself. I didn't even have AirPods. My kids are like, "Oh my gosh, you didn't have AirPods, Mom?" What? I didn't even know what AirPods were. I didn't know how to use WebEx or Microsoft Teams. My team is scattered all across the country. So we would get on, we called it Ready Talk. I don't know if we even use that anymore, but a phone system where we did conference calls, but we had very little visual opportunity to see each other. We just didn't utilize those services because we really didn't need to. And we also had very little flexibility to work remotely, really because of who we are and the services that we provide. When you're an energy company like this, we have alignment and groundmen and pipeline operators and folks like that, warehouse operators who cannot work from home. They have to be in the office. So the pandemic really forced us to learn how to use technology. I now have AirPods. I have 2 pairs of AirPods. I can use WebEx and Microsoft Teams and Global Meet and Zoom, obviously, and all those things. But it forced us to learn technology, to collaborate, and also provided insight into the fact that remote working does work for some, and it's very effective. We have a lot of metrics across supply chain that shows that we were much more efficient at home in some cases than we were in the office. So we've modified our policies across the company to allow more of that. So I really think I have a lot of an HR background as well. So this is something we've talked about quite a lot, and I think it's a key benefit to our ability to retain and attract key talent at the company.
Yeah,
Also, about Accenture.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with everything that Wendy said. Were implications at Accenture as well, and what we're seeing across our client base, and a lot of the conversations are around return to work, and the supply chain implication of that is really around your contracting, around lease management, and your building management, and Accenture itself is looking to reduce our footprint by about 25%. Because our folks have proven that they can work remotely and be very productive at doing so. And so we're having a lot of strategic conversations around how can you do strategic cost takeout around facilities management, and what does that mean, and what does that look like long term. And so that's definitely a big topic of conversations for all of our clients.
In our case, it's kind of interesting because if you think about pre-COVID, the entire model, the industry was wrapped around reduction of inventory, limitation of sources, better use of working capital. And we thought that supported our value proposition because it limited supplies, and when there were shortages, we'd have a greater model. COVID flipped everything. Every hospital system in the country now has a warehouse, and in many cases required now to maintain inventories. And of course, hospitals aren't good at this. So they're maintaining, in some cases, 10 years worth of inventory, and they have no means to turn it, something we didn't anticipate. So now suddenly it kind of twists our value proposition a little bit to determine what kind of role we play in helping them alleviate, turn inventory in a way that we didn't really anticipate. And I'd say the one thing I'm not really sure if it sticks up, and this is industry-wide, not specific to our business, is as you're well aware, there's this whole Buy American model, and we're seeing manufacturing in America just start to crop up. And there's a question, and we're getting now a manufacturer base that we never anticipated on our platform, and having to design a supply chain around that. The question we have is it really truly sustainable, or as soon as this goes away, will we go back to where we are? And that's one I don't think we can answer yet. So, Those are some of the things
Evie,
we're doing.
just a quick question around material traceability. One of the things that we saw a lot of the healthcare organizations focusing on early COVID is that they really just had lack of visibility of what materials they had and where. And so, especially in the healthcare system, it became very important to have, a lot of investments in
the capabilities that it could do the things we needed to do. Now we're seeing these plugins that are highly developed and mature that we're able to, that really enable a business like ours that's a marketplace business as a whole.
Wendy?
Yeah, I can kind of come at that as a little bit different way, not necessarily pandemic related, but just overall supply chain. I do agree with EV that in some cases your supply chain organization is kind of the last thing you think about until you realize how important it is. And back in, I guess about 2018, we had an effort. We were looking at our nuclear plants and cost of nuclear plants, and you all probably have seen a lot of the media about nuclear plants being so expensive to operate that they've had to close down. Even strong operators, we had to close down and sell our top operator out in Wisconsin. And what that did is that whole effort to really look at cost in a nuclear plant just launched the whole value proposition around strategically managing how we spend money at Dominion Energy through supply chain. We spend billions of dollars through supply chain, and so it kind of highlighted the value of supply chain and that really strategic focus. So we launched a strategy called Buy Smart, which really just put a focus on competitive bidding, put a focus on consistency and standardization of processes, utilization of data analytics, upgrade of our tools. Our tools were very manual and very clunky. We had specified, kind of customized our tools to fit our processes when we really needed to deal with best in practice, best in class processes, and really kind of let our companies and our peers and our partners guide us in that direction. So Accenture has been a great partner for us in this transition. We are now in year 3 of this transition, and we've far exceeded all of our financial goals that we committed to the company. We used a startup as a closed loop supply chain is a big theme now, and really trying to capture the savings that supply chain brings. And we used a small startup company called Shibumi, and I don't remember how we were introduced to them, but they have a tool and a tracking mechanism that really got us off the ground to leverage initiative tracking and measurement in a very tactical, very objective way. And now it fully supports what we call the Envision Tomorrow program across the entire company. So it's a consistent process and tool that we use. They've offered solutions for robotic process automation. They've offered a solution to help manage our PPE requests during the pandemic. So we were able to utilize this system for multiple things, and we were able to, again, use them out of the box and really drive a lot of value for the corporation.
And Russ, you have anything to add? Okay, of course, she referenced Accenture right there in your partnership with them also. So I know you guys are involved in a lot of that. Shifting, again, staying on innovation, while a lot of innovation is supposed to increase efficiencies and productivities in supply chain management, it can also be expensive. And just jumping off of what we were just talking about with the third-party conversation, how is, let's talk a little bit about spend management and what factors into your supply chain operations. How have you optimized where your dollars go to improve your supply chain? And Russ, you can go ahead and start with that one.
Yeah, this really plays on what Wendy was
with that one.
Yeah, this really plays on what Wendy was saying around closed loop spend management. And the strategies that we think about as we're partnering with our clients is really combining both the demand and the supply side. So if you think about from a supply chain perspective, we're thinking about getting goods and services in-house, but you also have to think about the financial aspects of what is the business planning and budgeting for, And so when we think about spend analytics, we think about the two components coming together. So where are there opportunities to not only look at where do you have opportunities for supply consolidation and leveraging preferred suppliers and moving your tail spend to preferred suppliers, but there's also a significant opportunity to think about, what are your policies and procedures around different budgetary aspects that impact your P&L. So when you think about right now, as people are beginning to return to work and return to travel, looking at your travel policies and your travel budgets and where there are opportunities, we call it demand destruction, of making changes now so that you're not going to be spending those budget dollars in the future. And then to Wendy's point, creating that connectivity so that you have the visibility long-term to, are people being compliant to those policies? Are people utilizing the contracts that are put in place? So not only do you put the systems in place to identify where that value is targeted, but then you have a mechanism to ensure that those cost takeout are sustainable year over year.
And EV, how do you optimize? Do you have enough dollars right now in the early stage?
For us, we're down the customer and supplier acquisition path at this particular point. So we hope we gain the skill that causes us to have to do that later. So.
And Wendy, you talked a little bit about a closed loop. Anything else you wanted to add to that conversation?
Yeah, I would just say I agree with Russ. I think the closed loop is the way to capture the savings, and when those really mount up, it really does provide a quantitative way to show the value of, gosh, if you competitively bid versus just routinely using the same supplier, that can really drive some savings. And you might have to change a supplier, which is disruptive sometimes because this one company, they've been there for you when you needed them, but an opportunity to change suppliers or diversify your suppliers and drive significant savings to the bottom line just shows the benefit and the way to kind of take advantage of some of those opportunities. And so our closed loop process and our more strategic focus on just buying smarter has really demonstrated over and over again some of the benefits of just being more strategic at the way we look at things. So it's brought our leadership team and our supply chain teams in a much more collaborative space together to figure those things out. And I agree, policies and procedures are key, and understanding what your systems can do for you. And that's one thing that Accenture has really helped us with tremendously is, you can use them in certain ways, but there's certain ways you can make them work more strategically for you or get more information, get more benefit and value out of those. And they've been very helpful. There's not just a one size fits all solution for sure for anything.
Shifting a bit to corporate social responsibility, I think that's something that at least I've observed anecdotally is sort of coming to, people are more interested about it than they were maybe even pre-COVID. And so relevancy, resiliency, those have always been really important parts of supply chain management, but now people are thinking about responsibility. Are you managing or iterating your supply as you're kind of managing and coming up with new formulations of supply chain? How are you thinking about environmental and social responsibility issues, and what are some of the best practices that you're trying to implement along those lines? And I'll just leave that anybody that has something that comes to mind.
I could start on that one. We do have a very strong focus on sustainability and environmental protection here at Dominion Energy. We do have a goal to reach net zero emissions by 2050 and to be the most sustainable energy company in the country, and that's quite a large feat for us. So it's something we focus on in every aspect of all of our operations. So that applies to our own scope 1 emissions, but also drives our downstream emission strategy to encourage our suppliers, both our supply chain suppliers and then our gas suppliers, since we're in the gas business in multiple states, to reduce their own emissions. So we have a supply chain sustainability strategy, which focuses on the social aspects. So driving more spend to diverse suppliers in the communities that we serve is really important to us. And then also the environmental aspects, which is generally what you think about when you think about sustainability, is the environmental protection component, or the environmental aspects of protecting the communities we serve and really driving that accountability to suppliers as an extension of us. We have many suppliers out in the field working alongside our folks, building pipelines, and electric transmission systems, things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity to make mistakes if they're not careful. And so we're really driving that supplier accountability and really driving toward the strategy going forward, just supplier disclosure and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Right now it's going to be a voluntary thing for them to voluntarily disclose, but in the future, I think we'll see more of a mandatory requirement for suppliers who want to do work for Dominion Energy to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions, and they'll be evaluated on that as part of bid processes. We're already starting to ask questions and put those types of questions in bid processes. So this is a passion of mine. I could talk about it all day long. I'm the chair of an organization very dedicated to just this, and it's called UISCA. It's the Electric Utility Industry Sustainability Supply Chain Alliance, which is a big mouthful. But basically, we are working with many of our peers in the utility industry to advance sustainability best practices in supply chain activities and supplier networks. So it's something that it's very exciting to us, and I think you'll continue to see Dominion Energy be very vocal in this space as we push toward net zero in 2050.
In our case, I got to tell you, inherent to our value proposition is sustainability, right? Depending on whose numbers you look at, there's $20+ billion that's actually product purchased but not consumed. So anytime you can provide broader access and availability and maximize consumption, a major part of what we're able to offer to our industry is model of sustainability. So that was kind of the natural inherent part of what we do. One thing we didn't plan on, and I would tell you that got exposed in COVID, and I can't tell you we have a complete plan on it, but it's a requirement go forward, is the veil got pulled off as to where product is actually made. And hospitals did not know that. They knew the brands that they bought, but they did not know where they were made. And now suddenly they're asking all the right questions about, what are the conditions? How is this being made? Those types of things that I think are a requirement for our industry as the future. I think it's a good thing that comes out of this, but to tell you that we've completely figured it out, we haven't, but we absolutely need to as part of our value proposition.
And Russ, how is Accenture helping people in supply chain sustainability efforts?
Yeah, sure. So one is we're working to launch this year a Supplier Sustainability Hub where we're able to interact with the supplier onboarding processes for our clients and then build out the questionnaires and the qualifications and the standards around enabling suppliers to communicate that back as part of our social reporting process. I think that it'll be great in terms of having kind of a standard way to interact with our supply base, across all of our clients. In addition to that, specifically, we're working with a lot of our consumer packaged good clients as an example to look at long-term supplier development. So when you think about all of the droughts that are happening out in the West, what is that going to do to our farming? And where do we need to think about in terms of developing future supply base around those green agricultural economies, and then what does that do in terms of when you think about cows and the methane that's produced, and how to make sure that you're tracking and managing that and helping develop and cultivate sustainable farming techniques is an area that's a really hot topic across that industry. One that I think is really cross industry, and Wendy and I've had a lot of conversations about this, is around electrification. And it's a huge topic. It's very hot in most industries, and there's not really one industry that's dominating, kind of owning that end-to-end value chain when it comes to electrification. And it really is transforming the way we think about supply chain. So when you think about charging stations, batteries, where are those going to be located? Are we going to electrify our fleet vehicles? Are we going to help electrify our customers' fleet vehicles? It's a real hot topic and makes a huge impact. We're really seeing that in North America, we're laggards when you look at what they're doing in Europe. We look at what British Telecom has done in terms of electrifying their entire fleet. And so it's a real important process. I know, Wendy, at Dominion, you guys have already started working with Richmond Public Schools to electrify their buses. And it's a great kind of first step in that journey.
Yeah, that's right. We have 50 school buses across the state, many of which have been placed for a couple of years, and we're expanding that effort now, which is really kind of cool because you can operate the bus during the day, obviously for that primary function, but when they're parked at night, they put power back into the grid so they can actually become a battery source for us in powering homes and other facilities. But that, you're right, Russ, electrification is a big issue for us. I should have talked about that as well. It's we are moving more toward an electrified fleet. Sedans, SUVs, obviously readily available. There are other, when you think about work vehicles, we're migrating through to determine, it's very important to us that our people in the field have the right vehicle for their job, but we're definitely electrifying. And then also on our gas side, using alternative fuels where appropriate as much as we can to set the right pace for electrification of the fleet. There's a lot of change management in that. I drive a Tesla personally. I have an EV and I love it, but I did not at first. So it takes a lot to get somebody to embrace electrification. So there's a lot of strategy behind that and in the culture shift as well to encourage folks to really want to drive, not just a Tesla because it's cool, and it is cool, but to drive an EV and do what it takes to charge and things like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited personally about the Ford Lightning truck on that line. That solves a problem that I have. I'd like to do that, but I always hate how bad trucks are in gas.
Well, my husband, the Welleners already have a deposit in on Ford F-150.
I may have to come by and do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll let you know when we get it.
Shifting quickly to artificial intelligence, AI, and automation. That's been cited by many experts as being something that's important for future readying an organization's supply chain. Can you chat a little bit about how your business is deploying AI in the supply chain? Again, open question to whoever's doing interesting stuff in that.
And I can talk a little bit about the process that we think about when we think about, AI and automation, and then, if there's use cases others want to kind of pile on to. But typically we look at we do an end-to-end process evaluation with a company to understand, and we did this with Wendy at Dominion, is looking at where's their waste in the process, and then looking at taking that waste out vis-a-vis implementing a bot to drive time and cost savings. Creates a great business case to then figure out strategically where can you replace the work that humans are tactically doing today, free them up to do more strategic activities. A lot of businesses are seeing a strong business case there. But with that being said, there's an infrastructure that has to be established around robotics, COE. We oftentimes jokingly call it bots gone wild. You got to make sure that the bots are working accordingly, that that someone is making sure that if they're supposed to be filling in a certain field in a certain computer system, that's happening appropriately, and that they're not getting out of control. But we're seeing a lot there, and we're also seeing a lot around natural language processing being built into the buying process. So our end users want a simple, easy buying process. They get frustrated that they can go onto Amazon and buy something with a click of a button, and then they come to work and it takes a long period of time to go through the requisition process. And so we're partnering with folks like Google and others to think about natural language processing. How can that play into like a Google search to then drive interesting outcomes to make the process really simple? So when I say I want to buy a laptop, I don't have to know a lot of details around what kind of laptop. I don't need to know how to categorize it. I don't need to know which GL I need to go and apply that to. There's a lot of based off of questions that a front door would ask me that allow me to get to the right place to buy the right product at the right time.
I would say that for us, the key thing, because we deal with so much with a disrupted supply chain and a global supply chain, is the predictability of these shortages and the use of AI to be able to better predict those things. As a matter of fact, right now, just in the last 3 or 4 weeks, there's a shortage of surgeon's gloves. We working with the development group to identify what were the signs of that we could have seen earlier on, whether it was raw goods or other things relative to transportation. In this particular case, caused by issues associated with transportation. because if we can have any kind of real credible impact in that, then our customers are going to be very, very interested in that. They want to know about shortages before they happen. It's actually potentially more important than the value proposition we have.
Wendy, anything to add? How about like computer, human machine solutions, hybrid solutions? Are there ways that artificial intelligence and maybe analytics automation helps you guys out in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, Jeff, and I'll add on to what Evie and Russ said. We are deploying quite a few bots here at Dominion Energy because, you know, we're trying to make our people, our colleagues, put them into more scenarios where they can be more strategic and they're not having to deal with the day-to-day administrative functions, routine functions where you really don't need to put any thought into things. You just need to get them done, which is really a perfect equation or a perfect use case for a bot. So we actually have several that we have already deployed, and we have several others that we're getting ready to deploy. But we really do have a very strong focus on technology. Because when you look at a company across Dominion, and I think Evie mentioned the Amazon experience or Russ, one of the two, you know, you want right now you could potentially have a lot of rogue spend if you're not careful, because folks have company purchase cards, and it's very easy. I'm a big Amazon user. Very easy, within 30 seconds you can find what you need at the best price and order it and have it at your house the next day. And so we really need to be thinking along those lines with the solutions we provide internally to our employees when we're providing company resources, company dollars to buy company materials. So we're looking for things like, you know, a landing page that says, I have a need for this, and whether it's a computer keyboard or a mouse, or whether it's an iPhone, or whether it's a tape measure or a ladder or something, that they're now going to Lowe's or Home Depot or Grainger or whatnot, different places, because we don't have a portal for them to use. That brings all of that spend into a front end device that actually gives them the ability to buy something at Dominion Energy reduced pricing or negotiated pricing, which will be leveraged based on the volume across the company. So anything that we don't have an operational need to be different, we are looking to push through consistent processes and practices so that we're all buying the same type of tape measures, we're all buying the same type of gloves, safety glasses, hard hats, those types of things. That's the vision. And technology and automation really, I think, will help us get there.
Great. I want to ask one quick question on blockchain, and then I want to leave some time to do some of our Q&A, and then I want to ask. I want to make sure we get to the last question on my list, because I think that's a really cool one. So, real quick question: are any of your companies working any with blockchain? And there's a lot of research on how they can do this to help increase the visibility and transparency in supply chains. And if you are using it, how are you using it?
We are not. So I'll defer. I'll defer to Evie and Russ on that.
Russ, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question that I get a lot in terms of how is supply chain using blockchain, and probably the more simple answer is it's not being used a tremendous amount in supply chain yet. I think I would say it's being misused a lot in supply chain, kind of used for the wrong purpose. But what we are seeing kind of in lieu of that, and lots of times we'll direct our clients, is when you think about multi-party systems. So, a lot of companies, if you look at Dominion today, sharing, your needs for MRO with an integrated supplier and giving them access to your ERP to do that, is a simple and not as eloquent solution as blockchain, but it's as equally as effective when you don't need to have that tight precision around the transaction and maintaining that transaction. So you really are seeing blockchain much more explosive in the financial services industry, probably followed by the healthcare industry, and then followed by consumer packaged good. So I think it will evolve and get there when you think about, contracting at some point. But I would say we have a lot of other less sophisticated solutions with leveraging LlamaSoft, Blue Yonder, logistics tools like those to bring multiple parties together to be able to share and transact and have visibility to demand, forecast, planning. along the end-to-end supply chain.
Yeah, and I would say within our business, the promise is astronomical in terms of what it could do for us. But the maturity of where it is just such that it's really not effective right now. We talked to several different folks in terms of how we could do it. Just really, we haven't seen any viable use case at this particular point that creates value for us. And then you have to consider that our customer base, we don't even have universal product identification. There's not a standard barcode in healthcare for products. So the industry has to move to take advantage of that technology, but the promise is great.
If you allow that, we've had a couple of questions in the Q&A box, and I think they're targeted maybe to certain individuals. So not everyone needs to respond to these, but so for example, Evie, I know you do a lot of work in healthcare, but in healthcare, this is the question. In healthcare, our practice is to set par levels according to previous year's usage. This retrospective approach does not adapt to changes in census accentuated with the pandemic. Do you have any advice to move to prospective sourcing for needs in areas where patients are scheduled for procedures supply chain could source according to the upcoming scheduled needs?
Well, it's again one of those areas of tremendous promise. Just think about it. You schedule a surgery generally 3 weeks to a month prior to actually having it. So you have the demand forecasting information in hand relative to what that procedure is, and it's not connected actually to the supply side of it. And hospitals traditionally have done a poor job on the supply side. This is one of those examples where I would say that the trick is the promise is there, but hospitals see themselves as care providers, not as supply chain organizations. And so very often it's not viewed strategically. I do believe COVID has changed a lot of that in the priority of supply chain and the opportunity in terms of increasing quality, decreasing cost, and improving service levels is now more front and center. So I think the probability of success with that is greater than it's ever been. But that promise of that particular area is always been a big part of the healthcare supply chain. I think it's well known. I just don't think it's relative to other priorities been acted on.
And Tanya had two questions, and maybe Wendy or Rush, you can help with this one. Do you anticipate employees returning back to the level of travel? If no, when or why not? And then kind of combined with that, do you expect the battle to attract and retain talent to be as fierce as it seems to be in this new era going forward? I'll let you take those kind of as you like.
Yeah, I can start with that. I definitely don't see the level of travel going back to where it was. I think it's going to be significantly reduced for us for a period of time. And I think that's not going to impact us at all negatively from an operations perspective, because we are so now fluent in utilizing our virtual tools and things like that, just meetings like this, where before we would have gotten on a plane and flown to Scottsdale or flown to Vegas or New York or wherever for a meeting. I was doing, board meetings in person for 2 hours and flying, 2 days or whatnot. We had a lot of that happening. And now I think the virtual tools and the ability to collaborate that way is really going to meet the need for a lot of the travel that we did do. Now, obviously, we're going to be meeting with suppliers and meeting face-to-face. There's a lot of value in some cases with the face-to-face collaboration, but I think the virtual tools will really provide a great service for us in enabling that collaboration to avoid the travel. And I think the talent, I do think folks have choices. I think people have choices, and I do think that the working from home and the virtual experience is going to become more and more in demand. So I think it's up to all companies to really evaluate their practices and policies to enable that as much as possible in order to attract and retain the workforce they need going forward.
And we may be better at that in supply chain management maybe than in other areas, because we're sort of used to kind of the extended enterprise. And while we might have done visits in the past, we've also done a lot of communication like this in the past, typically in the field.
Agreed. Except for me, I didn't know how to do it.
I only knew how to do it on one platform. I knew how to do it on LinkedIn, and then I was learning Zoom, and then the pandemic hit, right? So
yeah, that's right.
Now, yeah, you're right. I'm good at all of them now. Russ, anything to add on that one?
No, I agree with everything. It's just the war on talent's crazy though right now. It's unbelievable, and good for folks to have a lot of more choice and opportunities to work, wherever they choose to.
Yep. And I want to, this was one of the last questions on my list, but I want to make sure that we get to it. So we still have some, and I want to encourage people to use the question box if you've got any questions to ask anybody. And I think, and I don't know, Kat, you may be better versed how you want to do this. We could also open it up to verbal questions. I'm not sure how you were planning on doing that. But before we get to that, let me ask you the last question, because I want to make sure we get it in here. For each of you, can you give us one prediction about what your supply chain will look like in both 2025 and some in 2035? So I'm asking for your crystal ball here. What does supply chain look like 2025, and what does it look like in 2035?
I can go first, I guess. I don't necessarily have a bifurcation between the years, but I think, we are really moving toward a place where automation and actionable data analytics are critical to successful and efficient supply chain. I think data and technology are key factors for an efficient and innovative operation and organization. I think we are now and will continue to be even more so into the future years, 5 years, 10 years, a hub for an enormous amount of data going past procurement and logistics into, risk, economic development and impact and those types of things. So supplier evaluation and performance monitoring is going to be even more critically important and will automatically come from a wealth of web-based data points, and those inputs will make supplier selections and drive commerce. So it's, the data analytics and our ability to capture that type of information is critical now, and it will just become even more so going forward.
And I would say in our world, B2B e-commerce is the fastest growing sector of e-commerce, and marketplace is the fastest growing component of that. And I hope in 2025, when people think about marketplaces in healthcare, they reference HPX as the primary source to do it. I hope that's the #1 change. But over the course of the next 10 years, I think what we have to do, and I hope the biggest change we see in healthcare, and this is for all of us, is we have to increase visibility within our supply chain as a whole. It's a completely different supply chain. If product is available down the street and you have somebody who needs surgery up the street, you have to have availability and access to that supply. So my hope is over the course of the next 10 years, the things that we enjoy on the consumer side get deployed on the B2B side, and that there's broader visibility, access, and transparency within the healthcare supply chain.
Yeah, and your industry is a classic example of an industry that's kind of undergoing that change, right? Because it used to be, you're talking about working with McKesson, it was a very wholesaler, distributor-based model, where they would consult with the practice care people that did their own, about what to purchase. And now you really see that change where even Amazon's getting into that business.
Absolutely.
In a more meaningful way. And then you've got actors like you that are looking to help people that are trying to do it independently. So.
Yeah, I think the cool thing for startups and the innovators is that anytime Amazon does anything in the industry, the whole industry pays attention and acts against it because they're trying to protect their interests. I think what's happening, representative of what we're doing here today, is that the folks who can really make a difference and make the change are really probably these organizations that are innovative and startup, and then certainly these folks come in later on.
Russell?
Yeah, I think the most exciting part about what the changes that are going to come is really the talent in the workforce, right? We're in 10 years, we're going to have a whole new population of workers who have grown up with, having iPhones in their hands and having different kinds of technology capability. And I think the type of innovative ideas that they bring to our organizations will be exceptional. I think some of the things that we tolerate in terms of some of the kind of lack of nimbleness around some of our tools and applications, there'll be lower tolerance for that. And the way we do our processes and the way we work, I think that'll transform and change based off of the way this emerging workforce, as they come in with new and different ideas of how they did school or did Zoom during the pandemic, how all that will affect our work and supply chain, I think will be dramatic. And I'm really looking forward to having this new, different, creative group of employees coming into the workforce.
So, Kat, did we have anybody that wanted to ask any additional questions?
Nobody messaged me. If you guys want to, let me know. Otherwise, I think we can wrap up.
Okay. Well, I'd like to appreciate the panelists. I learned a lot. I took a bunch of notes for my own study, and hope that we can interact more. It's funny, the more I've only been in Richmond, back in Richmond for 4 years, and I really appreciate groups like this, because I find that even compared to other places I've been, I'll always run into people that I've met on these things. Again, like Evie and I had met before, and it seems to be that we're big enough to be substantial, but also small enough that we know who some of the big players are in town. So I want to encourage you guys to participate in Richmond Inno and all the things that they're doing as well. So, and there was a question of, are we going to make this recording of this session available broadly, and how?
Yes, I will write a recap story that will go up probably later this week, early next week, and a recorded video of the session will be along with that as well. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you to all of our panelists again for such a compelling conversation. Like I just said, we'll post a recap of today's event, so look out for that. Don't hesitate to reach out to me with Inno or any of the panelists with questions you may have. And thank you again to our presenting partner, Accenture. I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much.
Thanks,
you, Rob.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks all.